One of the things that seems to come up when you talk about sort of, the world moving towards a plant-based diet is people go, but what would happen to all the cows? What would happen to all the pigs?
Yeah.
So what do you say to that?
What do I say to that? Well, I say that, okay, so we are great. The human race is actually waking up, and they're very progressive, and they've decided to not kill each other, and they've decided to not kill animals as well. Great start. Okay, so already I'm like, wow, this is a great surprise. And then we sit down with the greatest minds on the planet and the greatest... in fact, we don't even need the greatest minds. The reality is that all these animals that we see have been bred. The reason that we have millions and millions of animals in the UK is because we're breeding them. First step... Absolutely. So this is let's go down this interesting Berty as Prime Minister. So you've put me, and what I've done first step is I've put every household has to have a hummus tap. So you have a hot tap, a cold tap, and a hummus tap. So that's Bertyville.
It's my vote.
Yeah. So I'm president, and I've phased out meat eating is becoming to be phased out, and the reality is that I could come up with a concept, but I would take advice from experts as well. So first step is how do we cope with all these animals? They keep popping out. Okay, if you stop breeding them, if you stop forcibly breeding these animals, they won't breed as much. The reason there is so many of them, and also we're hyper confining them and breeding them at like super rates, as soon as we can. In some cases, that's obviously, when I talk about these things, there's obviously going to be little outliers, but I talk about the majority because the majority of it is about making money and getting animals bred fast and fast and fast. So first step, stop breeding them. Second step is, so we've now got all this land that was devoted to breeding animals and fattening them up, letting them eat food, whichever form it is, grass, or you bring in corn or whatever, or soy, whatever product. With this land, these animals can either live on that land, or we like I visited many sanctuaries, we open this land up for sanctuaries. And then there's leading on from that, other people go like, oh, so when the whole world goes vegan, these animals are going to go extinct. You want to kill these animals. And the reality is, it's like, that's insane. It's like, oh, somebody's car's broken down and you want to smash the windows as well. It's like, no, that's craziness. What?
I think there's two things going on here, because if you take your traditional, your black and white dairy cattle, they're a bred species. They are an evolution of a species that would have lived in the wild. They're not a creature that would live in the wild.
No.
Anyway, so the question. So if we start phasing these animals out and stop breeding these animals, then very possibly that type of bred Pacific dairy cattle will become extinct, exist in the most limited ways in sanctuaries as some kind of evidence of
how
mankind's history of how we ate food.
Yeah.
But cattle itself won't become an extinct species, and there will still be. You would still be able to have scenarios where you could have a small number of wild cattle that would live naturally, as we have, as could happen, say, on Dartmoor or, in Kazakhstan's steppe land. There's huge swathes of, grassland towards, South Asia and, East Europe. And so you will still have these places where, where these animals exist, as the root of what was subsequently bred to become fodder.
Absolutely. And within that, I'm just going to sort of top up on what you said, because the original animals these what I call genetic hybrids, manipulated genetic hybrids that we currently have that you see in fields, they're not the natural animals. They've been created. They've been a little bit like what we do with dogs. We mix their genes so that they have this certain tail or whatever, or they have this certain size udder or whatever. We do that with the animals we eat because of money and profit and what we can gain from it. The reality is that the jungle fowl, so chickens, chickens that we see and some people eat in the UK came from a jungle fowl. Jungle fowl is like a wild animal. These animals still exist, and cows still exist. So it's really interesting. Like I said to you about before about the holding the microscope or holding the magnifying glass over veganism. Like these notions of, it's the recurring topics of what about what you're going to do with all the animals? You're going to make them extinct. Why are we genetically hybriding these animals? Like what gave us the right to start mixing with their genes? Do you know what I mean? Like so that we could have a burger. It's insanity to me as an individual with my own perspectives. It's insanity to start messing around with other animals' genetics for a hamburger or something that you can make a bean burger and you still get satiated and you still get full and you still put sauce on it, and you can get, if you find a plant burger that tastes exactly the same. Why would we manipulate, mess around with these animals' genetics, make them their udders unbearably, in some cases unbearably too big? I don't know if you knew, Chris, sometimes in the dairy industry, the udders will be they're not, you look at the original cows, the udder's not the same size because they've been turned into dairy machines, not individuals. You know what I mean? And so with these, I'm always open to having these discussions, but it is a two-way street. Why are we messing around with their genes? If we're talking about they might go extinct one day, well, what we're talking about, the genetic hybrids that we've created, and in fact chickens, the chickens that are in factory farms would not survive outside of those barns. Inside the barns, in some of them they've created artificial lighting that mimics the sun, so that the animals grow at the fastest rate. And these individuals who I've seen on the back of a truck, and they did not look well, they did not look happy, they looked depressed. And my perspective was I felt sad and I felt horrible that these individuals, there was thousands of them on the back of this truck, and I looked into their eyes and I was like, why as humans are we doing this to these individuals for some sort of chicken burger or some sort of Sunday roast? Why are we messing with their genes? Why are we messing with their habitats and not allowing them, creating these genetic hybrids? What's it like a Frankenstein morph? Does that make sense, Chris? It's like a Frankenstein. When you mess around with a gene so much, it turns into a Frankenstein animal. And a Frankenstein animal that won't survive outside of a barn. Do you know what I mean? It's a very, why obviously it's a rhetorical question that anybody who eats meat or still eats meat need to ask themselves, why are we doing this?
People close their minds to it because you will come across an article every single week where very publicly animal welfare standards are called into question. So